All right, welcome everybody to the community lunch hour today. I'll let May start us off.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Community Foundation's Community Lunch Hour. Our program today is Storytelling by Data, and we're going to learn about the essentials of data and storytelling focused on integrating data into effective storytelling. Our team of presenters today, I am May Nachman with the United Way of Portage County, and I work with data every day. It's a big part of my job. Over the last 2 years, United Way has been working in partnership with Portage County Health and Human Services and Conduit Healthy Communities Institute to develop the PC Conduit website, which you're going to learn certainly more about as we move forward. We're eager to get the word out about how easy it is to access the free site and retrieve local, state, and national data you can use to tell the stories about your work. So thank you, Kai-Ying, for inviting us to be part of this exciting day. Next, I'm going to introduce Kai-Ying Vang, who is the community storyteller for the Community Foundation. She's responsible for putting together today's informative program, emphasizing the importance of turning data analytics into stories that everyone can understand while using narrative data and visuals. I'm excited to learn more from Kai-Ying about how metrics can be made more interesting and how to inspire action by what the data stories tell us. So again, thank you, Kai-Ying, for all your hard work putting this program together. Our PCConduit.org experts, Chris Wisegram, who's a health planner for Portage County Health and Human Services, and Briar Drexler, who is community health educator from Portage County Health and Human Services, will be guiding us through the data platform. Both of them have spent numerous hours developing and building the PCConduit.org website over the last couple of years and have been essential in getting the site operational. As you may know, health departments rely heavily on data tracking and interpreting data trending. You'll hear much more about this amazing platform as we move forward. And also joining us for the program presentation today is Andrea Pineda from Conduit Healthy Communities Institute. Andrea has been our project manager as we have built PC Conduit. And they are the company that have helped us build that platform. Andrea will be sharing some insights and examples regarding opportunities to collaborate using PCConduit.org to do storytelling. So again, thank you for joining us today. Okay, and just a little bit about kind of our goals of the presentation, the program today. We want to explore the basics of data. We want to learn to use it in our narratives to help us tell the stories. We want to gain the experience with PC Conduit, our data set at www.pcconduit.org. And lastly, I think, although it's not on our docket here, I think it is to inspire and motivate community members to use PC Conduit. It's great to build this kind of a platform, but we need people to use it. So we're hoping you're inspired to use the data for grant writing, research, and planning as we go forward. So a little bit, just a short little trip over to give you an idea of what PC Conduit is. PC Conduit's a free and easy to use interactive website that is easily accessible, and it's a source of data which will serve as a resource for nonprofits, corporate partners, policymakers in the government, faith-based organizations, foundations, and residents. So you'll get a full tour of the site with Chris and Briar later on in the presentation. So with further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Kai-Ying.
Kai-Ying, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. I love you and thank you for calling that out. So thank you, May, for that introduction. And everybody, thank you for your patience as I navigate technology with slide decks and muting to the best of my ability. And so before we start, I'd like to kind of get a gauge of where people are at in the room. So we've got a poll here that I'll go ahead and set this out. of what is your experience with PC Conduit? So zero if you've never heard of it, up to four if you use it regularly. And I know we've got a couple people in here who are from out of our region. And so if you neither live nor work in Portage County, go ahead and click the NA one at the very bottom. And that will be helpful because even though you may not use some Portage County Conduit specifically, there are other resources in your region that are very similar. Many United Ways also have a similar website that you can use to learn more about your community. And then I know I used to live in Minnesota. There was a statewide program called Compass, which really helped collect data across the state. So I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So I actually love what we're seeing here because it sounds like there's an opportunity both for those who have never heard of it to learn about it, and those who may have used it a little bit to learn more about how to dig into it more deeply. So thank you for that. And so let me review the agenda that we will go through today. We'll first talk about the power of data in storytelling, and then move on from how do you take your data into a story. My colleagues will go deeper into Portage County Conduit, what it is, how it's used, and we'll have some audience participation opportunities to really engage in this together and break apart how do we actually start to use data from this website for our specific needs. And then we'll talk about, you've got your data story, how do you engage your audience? If there's room, we have time for a small group activity, but that's flexible depending on how the day goes. And so I've got this comic to kind of ground us. It's from Chris Lacey, a colleague and friend who runs Fresh Spectrum. It is nearly impossible to make a boring story interesting, but it's super easy to make an interesting story boring. And we do it all the time. So keep that in mind as we navigate through this process together. So you're in this room with me, so I think many of you get it, that there is power in data when you're doing storytelling. But let's kind of break it down a little bit. First of all, what is data? I push back against this sometimes where there's this assumption that data is just numbers, but as a self-identified qualitative researcher, data can include things like words and conversations and visuals, art, observations that you make. Data is a lot more than just something that you put into a spreadsheet. And then how to get it. Actually, in this day and age, we suffer from an overload of data. And so the challenge is really trying to find the data that is relevant to set the context and insights that you need. And so today we'll explore PC Conduit as one example of a data set that you can use. And why does it matter? Well, when you have powerful data in your storytelling, it can really elevate your storytelling to the point where it can push others to think differently, take action, or share resources. An example of that is I worked on a project where we spent a few months in Bolivia collecting interviews and doing observations and getting together some data that we put into a report. The organization ended up using the knowledge that we shared with them to build a training center, and they were able to secure $100,000 in new grant funding that had not been available previously. And so I've got more polls because data, even though today we'll be focused more on secondary data, I'm giving you some examples of how you can start to engage with primary data, which is data that you collect yourself. So I'll go ahead and put in this next poll. So I'm curious, in your organization, with storytelling communications, do you not use data at all, or do you excel at using data points to provide context, education, and persuade your audience? All right. I'll go ahead and share the results. So this is exciting. We've got a subsection of you that are really, you are masterful at using your data. And so I would invite you to join in the conversation and share your insights if they kind of emerge throughout this workshop. And then we've got folks in that middle range where they use data and it mostly works, or sometimes there might be opportunities that they're missing because they don't use data as much as they would like. And so we're hopeful that this session can help push you forward a little bit further. All right, and then I've got a second poll. Let's see. I'm curious where your data comes from. And so do you use data that other organizations have produced? Use data that only your organization produces? Or really the third option, a combination of both? I don't know. Oh, you guys can see it too. All right. Or you can see the numbers kind of moving from different areas. All right, I'll go ahead and share the results. And so this is also really exciting to see that many of the organizations here are using data from both within and outside of their organization. And some of the organizations here, a smaller subset, primarily uses data that they produce. And so I think this session will be really helpful for you to kind of think about how do you use data outside of your organization. All right. And so we had just talked about primary and secondary data. And so today we're really going to focus a lot more on secondary data, which is data that you collect from outside of your organization, and maybe things like PC Conduit, which is available on a website, data from the US Census, or might be, if you work in a school system, data that the school already collects. And I was excited to see that many of you selected that you use a mix of both, because that, I think, is where it can become a lot more powerful, because you are providing secondary data to set the context, but primary data that is specific to your organization, your community, the issues that you care about, to dive a little bit deeper into the story. So as I mentioned, we'll be focused more on the secondary data today. And so the process we're going to walk through includes the narrative development, the data selection, data integration, story refinement, and finally, how do you engage your audience? All right, so I've got a question that I'd love for you to help me answer. Where do you get data from? So in the chat bar, type in the places that you get data from. So is it the US Census? Is it the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? Is it event surveys? Whatever you use to inform the data that you collect, please go ahead and type that into the chat. And I will mention also what is lovely about this is, imagine that you are in a community with other participants in this session. So if you see something that somebody else is doing that you would like more information about, reach out to them. You know, for example, Sam Fuller, you mentioned SAMHSA, which I'm familiar with, and others may not be. And if that's something that another person is interested in, please feel free to, you know, chat up Sam. I just volunteered you, Sam. All right, I'm gonna see if there's anybody who would like to share, like, what it's their favorite data source. Go ahead and go off mute. Otherwise, I'll pick a wonderful volunteer. Okay, well, Tracy Wilkinson, I love what you put on here, a database called Camp Brain. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Hi, I'm very new to my position, development director for Wisconsin Badger Camp. So our campers have a registration that runs through something called Camp Brain. So that puts all of their like health information, all of their locations, stuff like that. So at the end, we can run some reports through there to kind of see like how many campers did we have from this county that visited us, how many were out of state that drove to Wisconsin to see us. I've yet to fully complete it. I've just kind of gotten my toes wet. I'm about 100 days into my position here. So I'm just kind of soaking it all up. And that's the only one I know of so far.
All right, thank you so much, Tracy. And I will mention too, data exists in different ways and you engage with it in different ways depending on context. So you mentioned something about campers. And so those of you who work with children know that there are extra ethical guidelines that you have to consider when you're working with their data, or those who work in healthcare, there are HIPAA considerations. And so just be aware that the rules that apply for one data set may not apply for another. So before you even start digging into your data, so that you don't go crazy, what is helpful is to get a sense of what is the story that you're trying to tell. And so I'd like all of you to pause and reflect on some of the stories that you want to tell in your organization. And in the chat, type in the kinds of narratives that you want to put out there. It could be anything about the urgent need for services for the homeless or the importance of music education for the youth. I would love to kind of hear what kind of stories you're working on right now. And you can feel safe putting in it because I will not call out on an audience member this time. Now think about the mission of your organization. What kind of stories help further that mission? So while you're doing that, my co-presenters are really starting to look at some of the things that you're typing in, and we'd like to kind of see, like, are there some issues that you're sharing here that may be represented in the data with PC Conduit? So Briar, Chris, or May, do any of you three have some thoughts about some of the stories that are shared here that we might find data points in PC Conduit for?
Yes, I think one of the really top 3 issues in Portage County we identified during the life report in our calls to action was mental health. And going to PC Conduit, you can get local indicators around mental health. You can get state indicators around mental health, and you can get national indicators, so you can do comparatives of the data and what's happening here in Portage County. Is it the same that's happening in the rest of the state or whatever? So I think that there's also a couple of different interactive sites that you can look at that address all of those particular issues. So and Briar and Chris, I'm sure, could elaborate on additional things, but also childcare, the same type of thing. That's a very hot topic, and it's nice to be able to pull up data that's happening locally, nationally, statewide. So
Thank you for that, May. All right, and then let's move on to the next step on data selection. And so what data points provide context and insight for what you're looking for? So as you've got the story, you've got this idea of what you want to share with the world, and you need to find data that helps provide that context and that insight. So this may involve accessing public data sets, internal reports that you already have, or commissioning new research. So you want to focus on data that's relevant, reliable, and ethically gathered. I want to share an example of a blog post that we had at the Community Foundation that explores arts and culture and its economic impact and how much we are investing in it in our region, but then also providing data that is statewide and also nationally to provide context. The full blog post is available if you are interested in reading that later. And so what makes good data? Good data is relevant. As I mentioned, it provides context and insight to the story. It is reliable from credible sources. So locations such as the Center for Disease Control, you can trust that data. And if it's from a lesser known source, that you can trust the methodology or the way that the data has been gathered and analyzed. That it is timely. So timely can look really different in different contexts. So with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, data that's from 5 years old from Botswana is acceptable. But if you're doing election polling, you really need data from this week. And so just know that timely can depend on the context of your data. Ethical, that the data has been collected ethically with consideration to privacy and confidentiality of its participants, and that you're communicating it ethically as well, that it's not being cherry-picked, that it's being represented fairly. You want to make sure that your data is transparent in what you share. So cite your sources and anything that you did in the analysis. So for example, on PC Conduit, you can download spreadsheets of the data, and you may want to do things to kind of analyze it further and put it into charts and graphs, and you make decisions about which populations you're including in your analysis. And so being transparent about that is important to ensure that you are credible to your audiences and that it's accessible. So this is the most simple one, that the data is in a form that you can actually use it and you can present it, that it's not protected by copyright or other issues. So I have a question for my co-presenters. We talk about the importance of data coming from reliable sources. As an example, can you tell me more about where PC Conduit gets some of its data from?
I think PC Conduit gets local data from information that I'm not Andrea, but Briar and Chris have downloaded those actual data that was reported by community organizations. That data is loaded into PC Conduit and will be updated on a continual basis. Conduit Healthy Communities Institute, they are constantly updating the data. They have several hundred indicators that they track and verify the data, and that information is loaded into PC Conduit. So many sources, the American Community Survey and trusted sources like that, and maybe Briar and Chris have a few other ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so another one is our YRBS, which is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. That's updated typically on a yearly basis. There were some hiccups with COVID and participation with schools. Other things like the way that people commute to work, that's also gathered as data.
Anything else you can think of? That's a good example outside the box.
Yeah, I think just going back to off of what May said, a lot of what we use in public health ties closely with what United Way uses for their life report. And the reason for that is for the Division of Public Health for Portage County, we rely on the life report as somewhat of our community health assessment that we're required to do every few years, so that those data points are really relevant to what we do as well.
And sometimes there are new forms of data that are coming out that we are just newly emerging that we do end up adding or are working to add to Conduit, but it just kind of depends on the foundation that's adding them and if we can have it be a reliable source.
But thank you for touching on so many of these points down here. And so some of the things that you've just heard about PC Conduit, you want to think about that in respect to any other data source that you might be gathering from and asking those questions to make sure that you feel comfortable with using that data. And so another comment from Chris, could you get us some evaluation data showing that the program was a huge success? I would, but that story is not shown through our data. And so that is something to consider is when you talk about data, ensuring that it is representing the truth or a shared truth that exists in the community. And also to keep in mind that sometimes you can look at data from multiple viewpoints. So in this example, maybe the data says that the program wasn't successful on the metrics that were originally used to measure it, but there may be other data that you can find that talks about the other ways that this program has contributed to the well-being of the community. So keep in mind that there are multiple data points that you can look at to better understand what is the story of what is happening in our community. So you've got some data and you're like, this is great. So what do I do with it? How can I show it up so that it is connecting with audiences? So when you're looking at data, there's one that people often use, which is descriptive. It helps set the context and tells you what's happening at the basic level. Something that can be a little bit more powerful is when you start to be comparative with your data, looking at data across different groups of people, time periods, or geography, where you can compare and contrast. And so then your audience can start to make sense of why is this important and how is this different than what the ideal scenario should be. And some of the most powerful forms of data come in correlation, where you can examine how data points relate to each other and establish cause and effect or forecast trends. However, this is oftentimes the most difficult type of data to gather. I'm curious, Chris and Briar, one of the things we talked about here is comparative analysis. Can you give me some examples of how people might be able to use PC Conduit to make comparisons?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So many of the indicators or data points in PC Conduit already have other local comparisons, such as neighboring counties or municipalities, as well as state and national data. And then the other piece of it is, as you mentioned, Kai-Ying, is the timeline piece of it. So in public health, we're looking at a lot of initiatives are spanning across several years or even decades. So we can see that longitudinal data and see if there's an improvement or if a decline in the situation.
Yeah. And so as you think of yourself as a nonprofit organization, you might want to consider, for example, Chris talked about changes over time, and think about my nonprofit, to what extent have we been able to contribute to some of these changes that we've seen over time? I think it's sometimes hard to fall into attribution of we made this change, but you can think about we contributed to this change perhaps. And also when you're integrating data into your story, think about when it might be powerful to establish key statistics early on to talk about the gravity of the problem, or maybe using data as key turning points to underscore transitions or conclusions that are important to your audience. And so I want to push back and say data is more than just charts. There are a wide breadth of options you can choose to talk about your data beyond just charts and text. And so if you're doing quantitative number data visualization, you might want to consider line graphs, pie charts, scatter plots, maps, different ways of showing the numbers to visually connect to your audience. I live in the world of qualitative research, so using words, and words can show up in infographics, quotes where you highlight something visually, a word clouds, journey mapping is a really cool way of telling a story using data. And so there's a lot more. We'll put in the chat some links to Stephanie Evergreen. She does qualitative visualization, and then she also has a quantitative and qualitative chart choosers that can help you think about different ways to display your data. All right, and so now we'll look at, you've got some of your data in your story, but how do you actually make it flow? How do you make it connect for your audience? Some of the key principles that I always keep in mind is logical flow, ensuring that the data flows logically from the introduction to the conclusion, that there's a natural progression for the reader, that they can go through the story coherently. The second item is simplifying your language. I'm always editing, trying to make things more concise, more plain language so that it can be understood very easily by anyone. And then you can highlight key points through the visual tools that you have, whether it be through repetition, bolding, or if you're speaking about data, strategic pauses to emphasize crucial data points and findings within the story. So I want to go back to the example that we shared. So as we thought about this data story, being very clear in the upper left hand, like what is the purpose of this paragraph that I have here? What are we trying to convey with it? And then as we walk through the paragraph, setting the context of what does it look like in Wisconsin regarding arts and culture funding, making the case of why is this important? Because arts and culture contributes economically. It's not just something that's nice to do, it's something that brings value to our society. Giving insights about our foundation in the second paragraph and what the Community Foundation does to play its part in investing in arts and culture, and then doing a call to action, inviting the audience to get involved and get engaged. And so you can see in this just 2 paragraphs, really integrating data into the story so that it's not just something that feels good and hits our heart, but also hits our mind as well. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see ways in which data is displayed not just in text, but visually, so that it's very easy for the reader to make sense of it. On the top part, there's a quote that's put in bold. And then on the lower right, you've got this graphic that's so simple, but so powerful in showing that Wisconsin, with only 14 cents per capita, ranks last in funding for arts and culture. Contrast that to Minnesota, our neighbor, which is in 3rd place with $7.34 per capita. And then going back to some of the things that we mentioned, making sure that we're citing where our data is coming from in the graphic, the image source, and then in the text, the organizations that are providing that data. And so with that, I'm going to take a pause. I walked through some of the examples and ideas about how you can integrate data into your storytelling, and we will transition it to my colleagues to go deeper into Portage County Conduit. But while they're doing that, I would like you to think about some of the ways that this platform could be useful to your work. After our colleagues give their presentation and our guest speaker, Andrea, shares some examples from her work nationally, we'll have a large group activity where we'll give an opportunity for one audience member to walk through Portage County Conduit and get a team of experts to help you troubleshoot some of your data questions.
All right, thank you, Kai-Ying. So this is Chris Weisgram with Portage County Health and Human Services Division of Public Health. As May introduced in the start of the presentation today, I'm a health planner. And I'm here with Briar Drexler, and go ahead and introduce yourself, Briar.
I'm Briar. I am a community health educator here at the Division of Public Health.
All right, so we're gonna take a little walk through the Portage County Conduit website and just go through some of the key areas of it. And May and Andrea, if you have anything to add throughout our presentation, feel free to jump in. So first of all, Portage County Conduit was a collaboration between United Way of Portage County and the Division of Public Health. Started back in about sometime during 2022, we started uploading data and creating the site, and then rolled it out shortly after the 2023 Life Calls to Action were released in January of 2023. Really, PC Conduit, we view it as a clearinghouse for local data that's available to anyone that wants to find out data on topics affecting the community. And that can be policymakers, local coalitions, community-based organizations, our hospital partners, and so on and so on. And it really is available to anyone. So just if you want to follow along during the presentation and see what it's about, you can go to pcconduit.org on your computer or your device, and we'll keep going through. So again, this is just a little bit of a further about the project of PC Conduit. And really the reason we have this is we want the platform to be available to the community so that, as we mentioned, like community-based coalitions and other partners can use the data that's available on the site to help inform their decisions when they're working on policies or initiatives.
Grants.
Or rants.
Grants. Not rants.
So we hope that everyone uses it as a tool for that, so that we can see, what's going well in the community, what are some areas that we need to do some additional work, and then share that with the community so that we have a better chance of moving forward on these things.
So data does tell a story, and with PC Conduit, we can go into several different topic areas, different health indicators, different resources. It really does encompass a great amount of information all in one site, primarily for our local community, but also at larger levels like the state and national. So as Chris had said, the United Way of Portage County and the Division of Public Health, it's really a partnership, PC Conduit. So both organizations really do value having credible data readily available without much hassle. And although Chris and I really do the back end site, the work on the back end, we do use it for the front end too. So we can run our own reports for things like our CHIP, our Community Health Improvement Plan, our health assessment, looking up different information topics that I'm involved in with different groups and coalitions in the community, different grants that come up. Sometimes it's really, really helpful to have data points that help pinpoint what we really truly need to access funds. So I'm going to kind of go through this quickly here. The health indicators are really great. So we've got over 200. They've got trending data, comparative data, different things that we've already talked about that Kai-Ying has really highlighted. We also have different topic areas that we can choose from health to environmental health, community. There really are a great range. And these are all things that we can add to, we being Chris and I, and then the United Way as well. There are some featured resources, like promising practices, different funding opportunities, because really the list is endless. And then there's a location report builder, and I'm going to leave that for Andrea to really go into because she's the expert on that tool. All right, our tools and resources, ever changing. We try to keep this as up to date as possible. But as you can see here, there are many different resources to choose from the ALICE report, which we really utilized for our life report and finding out what our community needs, to our Community Health Improvement Plan, or CHIP, better known as, sometimes known as China. So in all reality, there are just a ton of different tools to use on this website, and it can be really customized for you and your organization and what you're looking to use the data for. All right, I mentioned the Community Health Improvement Plan. I've worked pretty hard to get a story to pop up on our PC Conduit, and it really does just walk you through the different calls to action. It gives a narrative, but it also gives different data dashboards. So we put together 3 different dashboards that relate to our CHIP, our main calls to action. And if, I'm not sure if they're in the chat now. Let's see here. Okay, awesome. Our lovely helper is putting them in the chat if you want to go ahead and follow along. Want to take it from there? Sure.
So as you can see, the data dashboards are something that we put together, and we'll show you how to build those in just a minute. But they really allow you to pull data together on a single topic or related topics. And we do that when we build the indicators in the background. We attach keywords to them so that we can pull them together and pull them even with similar data sources. So like equitable opportunity to be healthy, if you look at that one, it's going to give you a list of indicators that are related to that topic. And then we can share that dashboard with our coalitions and our members of our Healthy People Portage County group if they want to look at the data that's related to that priority area for our CHIP. And then the same thing with the other 2, mental health and social well-being and building a safe and thriving community.
And when you create a dashboard or you develop a report, it doesn't stay on PC Conduit. It actually gives you a specific link so that you can come back and use it when you need to. So just important to keep that link with you. That way you can access the data whenever you need to. And building reports. So this is kind of what Chris had referenced. These are the custom dashboards. So you can filter by any means necessary. Unfortunately, the more you filter, the less data you'll get, but you can also, that can also be a really good thing. You can have very specific localized data comparisons, trending. It just really depends on the topic that you're looking for. So curating your own dashboards is super helpful, especially when you're looking at grants and things like that. So you can definitely handpick it however you would see fit. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think at this point we'll probably just move forward, and this may be a good segue for Andrea to show us the location report builder that's actually going to be new on our PC Conduit site. We haven't learned how to use it yet, but she's going to show us what they look like and how anyone can use them on the site. So,
and later in the presentation, we'll come back to actually building a report, but we'll let Andrea take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm going to be sharing my screen in a moment. And I also have prepared some other examples from other clients that we have across the nation. So you can also have other ideas for you to replicate. So let me just share this in a moment. Please let me know when you see it. Hopefully you're all seeing my screen right now.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is how the PC Conduit website looks like. This is what we call the homepage, which is, again, the first thing that you look at once you enter that link. We do have a section here in the navigation bar, which is a build a report, where you can either build a dashboard, which is what Briar and Chris are going to show us later on. And then we also have what we call the location report builder as a second option. So I want to mention that within this platform, we have a total of, I believe, 490 indicators, which is a lot of data, a lot of information that can be very useful for you. Almost half of those are maintained by us at HCI, which comes from reliable national sources and other local sources. And then around the other half of the indicators are locally indicators that have been put into the site or the website by Briar and Chris. And all of those 490 indicators are coming from 78 different sources. When they show you how to build a dashboard, you will see that there is a way that you can filter. If you want data only for specific sources that you are confident on using, you can also filter the data to only use data coming from certain sources. So now, if you're doing report writing or grant report writing, or you want to showcase and build a report on your own, we also have a tool here, which is again the location report builder. This is accessible to all of you. So if you come here and click on report builder, you find this page where you can build your own one-pagers and reports, and then you can easily download those as a PDF. So let's take, for example, Portage County. So when you change to location or pick a location, you automatically get the title populated in here. You can edit that by clicking in here. So this doesn't really look that great. So let's just put Portage County, and maybe we want to change this a little bit and use this type of header and make it bold so it pops out a little bit more. Maybe you want to center this, and then you click save. And so this is for you to build those reports. So again, the text and the data that you can put in here is customizable as well. So let's say that now you want to start adding data into this report. You go to indicators, and I had already put in here, I noticed someone added in the chat that they maybe want to build a story around mental health. So an easy way of going to this is just put mental health in here. You click in here, and now it's going to be showing you a list of all the indicators that are available on the site that are related to mental health. So this is, again, great when building these kinds of reports. And then you, from here, you can pick up the indicators that you feel are important to tell your story. So let's just pick one right now. Maybe we want to choose this indicator for mental health, 14 plus days. And you are able to choose in here what type of visuals you want that report to have, as well as how Kayeng was mentioning before. It's very important for you to add context to your story of like, what is this indicator? Why is this indicator important? And why you're looking at that data. So we also have text that's also auto-populated based on each indicator that you're choosing. So you can click the boxes in here like, what is this indicator? I want to know what this indicator is. I want to know why is this indicator important? And obviously I do want to add certain visuals. So we can add maps. We can add the indicator value, and we're looking at this at a county level for Portage, but again, you can do it at a zip code level, census places, census tracts, whatever it's the goal that you have in mind. So let's just maybe check. Let's see. All right, we also have the comparisons in here. So we might want to compare to other Wisconsin counties. Let's just add the value, and let's just maybe also add a map to compare to other counties. Okay, so now you just click add, and all of those visuals are going to add it to your report. So half of the work it's already done for you, and now you just have to make it pretty. So let's say this looks kind of weird, so you can just drag it and make it shorter. Maybe you want to drag this up in here. Okay, let's just make this one shorter as well so it fits. So you can put one next to the other. You can come in here. So it says like, this is the, what is this indicator? But it did not add the title. So you can add in here, what is this indicator? And maybe you want to bold that part. And maybe you want to make it a bit bolder. See how the whole thing is changing already? Okay, there you go. This is the why is this important text. So you can do the same in here. You can bold it. And you can start playing around with this. So as you can see, this looks a bit wonky just because of the order I chose when adding it. But you can drag stuff in and out. So let's say that you want to keep both maps right next to each other. You can do that. If you want to write up your own blurb of what's going on in here and add your own interpretation, you can also add the text in here. You can add a location map. You can add demographics information. You can add your own text. Because of the time, I'm not going to be able to do the whole report, but this is just to give you an idea of a possibility that you have in here. You can preview this report before you save it. And this is how it's looking so far in a preview mode. If you're not satisfied with how you have the report looking right now, you can just go back and click edit in here and just continue to add stuff around and move stuff around. Now you will probably wonder, like, what if I started the report and did not have enough time to finish it? So we have a save option here. So you can either save that report as a PDF if it's ready, so it's going to download that data and that report for you. You can also temporarily save it for later. This saves it in your web browser. So if you clear cache or history, that might go missing. So just keep that in mind. And you can also download as a config file as well. So again, if you did not have enough time to finish that report, you can do that. A couple of things that I will mention here is that you can make this just as a one-pager report or a very long report. But when building the report, just keep in mind the page break, right? So just make sure you don't have a visualization or text like in between page breaks, and then everything should look perfect. I had done one already preparing for this presentation, which is around demographics of Portage County. So you can see here some visuals and information of demographics. I added here a comparison, again, comparing it to state value in here and some other useful information. Let's say that I'm completely satisfied with this report. I can just click on save and download as a PDF. And that report should be ready to share with everyone within your organization or even outside of your organization. Once that report is finalized, you will see at the bottom of the page where that data was taken from. If it's important also for you to have, what source is this data coming from. When you're picking up the visuals, you can also you can pick to add the source, what's the measurement period that you used, or you can either add the text box at the top, and indicating what sources were used for building the report. So there's like a lot of options for you to have fun with it. So hopefully a lot of you will be able to, create reports in here. Again, as I mentioned, the only thing to consider is the page breaks, and also that depending on the data that you see in here, it might take a while for that PDF report to be generated. I can see that it's a bit slower than usual. That means that hopefully a lot of you are using it at the same time. So it might take a while for the report to download for me right now, but please just keep using it. I can see that it's a bit slow because a lot of you are just kind of going into that right now. And also, as I mentioned before, I have prepared some other options of what other clients are doing in other places. So let me just, while this report is being generated, let me just jump into one of those examples. So as it was mentioned before, storytelling is a powerful tool for making complex information accessible. So take, for example, this LA County's Community Health Needs Assessment Report. They're based in California. This is a report with 161 pages, which is a lot. So it's 161 pages of detailed data. So the challenge is turning that information into a narrative that's easy to understand. And here's where the principles of effective storytelling come into place. So first, in the platform that they have with us, right? They identified what was the core story that they wanted to tell. For them, this meant focusing on key health insights and that were relevant to the community. So they have in here their priority areas and the non-prioritized areas. As you can see, instead of having, the typical guide of the report in here, they added a landing page with colors and the titles of each priority area big so people can read it and see it. And then let's just try to dig into one of their priority areas and see what they did there. So in here as well, they decided to use quotes from focus groups, sessions that they held to build those priority areas. We can see in here, they synthesize that data so it's digestible for everyone who's reading it and seeing it. We have the visuals in here, the trend over time. Again, there is text, but not as much text, so people won't read it. So it's easy to understand what this priority area it's about. They added some additional related indicators at the end. So when you click on that, and this is also available, of course, in the PC Conduit site. Every time that you click on an indicator, it takes you to an indicator detail page. And here you can see the latest measurement period. You can see what location you're looking at. Again, get the source information, who's maintaining that data, the source, location, more details, technical notes if it's needed. So everything that you need regarding that data, you can find it in the indicator detail page, as well as the why is this important, what is that indicator. And then another great example that I really liked that's also in this Lake County Hope Rising site is that they also built a story around poverty in Lake County. And I really love the language that they used. And that's why I think this is a really nice example. And they only used 2 pages. This is another tool that's available in our website that's called a stories module. So it was completely or specifically designed to build stories where you can unite text and visuals as well. So see, it says here like pre-pandemic in Lake County, there were 11,000 some people living below poverty level. They added a map in here so people can see it. Poverty is decreasing in Lake County year over year. So this is a good trend, and we see the trend in here. All of these visuals are also available to download. So if you want to use a specific piece of that report for your own reporting purposes or a presentation that you have coming up, you can download that data as a CSV and create your own visuals, or you can download the visualization in a image format or a PDF format as well. Then you can see in here, like, however, you can see it is still quite high compared to the state value. So there is still some work that needs to be done there. And then if you go to the second page, we dig a little bit more into the disparities when it comes to looking at the poverty in Lake County. So it says, like, if you look deeper, poverty impacts all racial groups, especially those who are American Indian, Alaska Native. Again, you can see the data in here. When you hover over, you get more information. Many of the county's younger age groups live below poverty level, so we can also see that in here. Then we also have some something to play in here with the demographics. So poverty in Lake County affects more women than men. So see, there are multiple ways that you can create stories depending on the topic that you want. And then with the variety of indicators that PC Conduit has, that's easily accessible to you as well. Laramie County, they also had a CHIP report that had 16 pages, and it was heavily text. It was text heavy. So what we did in here was, again, just kind of focused on what the story was and how we wanted to present that story. So they added, so we have this menu here, so you can navigate through all of the sections and go to the section that you're interested in looking at. So let's just focus in the introduction here. So you will see some text, right? But then we have our CHIP overview, and then you have your priority areas. Again, you can choose what visuals you want to present in here, but it's just best to present this to the community in a way that, again, it's easy to digest instead of just like a very large report that no one really is going to read it. And then also, again, heavily text, heavy reporting here, 61 pages. They did add some visuals in here, but then we kind of figured a way of making this story and adding the goals and the priorities in a way that, again, it's visually appealing and easy to understand. So if you have, questions on how to use the PC Conduit and how to build those yourselves, you can also always reach out to Brian, Chris, or myself, and we'll be happy to help you. So I'm gonna just stop and see if any of you have any questions. If not, I'm probably just gonna pass it off to Brian and Chris again.
Any questions from anyone regarding the PC Conduit website or the presentation so far? All right, with that, we're gonna move into, well, before we move into, I just wanna reflect on everything that's been presented. I really love those examples that you shared, Andrea, because they, some of the points that we brought up earlier regarding how do you create your story and really having a clear narrative and logical flow, really simplifying it so that your audience is able to digest it. I love that many of them were only 2 pages, because even 2 pages is a lot of information to absorb. And the way that they use visuals to highlight key points, whether that be quotes or the use of the gas gauges. So just really think about how can you communicate your story in a way that your audience is able to absorb. And so I've been really impressed with PC Conduit in the time that I've gotten to know it. And I don't know if anybody else shares this opinion, but initially it has felt a little bit overwhelming for me. And so the next task that we'll do together as a group is really walk through it with one example. And so that way we can kind of break down a little bit of how do we start to engage with this if we have an idea of what we want to focus on. So we'll do a practical example together. Is there anyone here who would like us to explore how to use PC Conduit to support their goals? Let us know. And I will say this is a unique chance for you to work with a team of experts who are here to assist you. Chris and Ryder have been working with this tool for a long time, very intensely. And we've got Andrea, who's a national expert on this type of database. And don't worry, I've got a backup plan if nobody volunteers.
I think we might need to put that backup plan.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so May, can you tell us about United Way, maybe an issue that you guys are wrestling with or working with in our community?
I think obviously, our all 3 of our calls to action are really important issues, and mental health certainly comes up as that first issue, and having local indicators available to go and look at what that information is for us to inform whether, for United Way in particular, whether we're writing grants or supporting other organizations who are writing grants, or organizations that write or our partner programs to United Way, and they are working on their United Way application for funding. We like a nice mixture of certainly local indicators, but also some comparative data to what's happening, whether it's to our neighboring counties, what might be happening in Marathon County or Wood County. So it's nice to be able to go to PC Conduit and look at exploring data. Maybe it's some specific demographic information that we're looking for, or it's going to the tools and resources section. We want to find out, that's where the life report, the 2022 2022 life report is stored, or the YRBS data report is stored, and we want to find out what's happening, you know, within the youth mental health area. So, I mean, there are numerous local indicators that will, you know, inform our work and the work of our partner programs as they seek funding, write grants, help you know, decision making for their organization on what direction they may want to move in supporting the needs of our community. So
Yeah. Well, Blair, would you take us a look at some of these resources that May mentioned? Because sometimes it can be really overwhelming to just dig into the data. So things like
Hey, Connie,
the
you
life
have a
report,
question?
for example. And then after that, we'll answer an audience question that popped up too. So yeah, like if I am a little bit unsure of where to start and I just want to look at a report that somebody else has already written, where might I go to find the life report?
So the first thing that you can do, so when you pull up pcconduit.org, this is the site you're going to see. This is the homepage, and you'll see there is a search bar, so you could type it in here, and it would pop up if you just type life report, or you can also go to tools and resources. You don't have to click on it. You can just hover, and then you can hover over life report. We have a couple of different versions. We've got the previous version and then the current version. So there are different options in here. You can look at the actual PDF, just a one-pager snapshot, and then also a web version, which links to the United Way. Let's say you want to click and see the full PDF of the most current life report. It might take a little while to load here just because I'm not fully connected to my main setup, but it will come up eventually.
Yeah, and while that's pulling up, I'll just mention sometimes it's really great to use the report that somebody's already written because you've got narrative, you got stories that you can look at without having to make sense of the raw data. And I really love too that you guys have, I think, 10 different sources of reports that already exist. So people aren't confined only to the life report. They can look at the ALICE report. They can look at other data sources as well.
I think another really nice feature of having that tools and resources area is that you don't have to keep track. You don't have to print out a document, have it on your shelf. You need something from the YRBS, it's there. The most current version is there, or which is really, really nice because I get a lot of people reaching out wanting a copy of the life report or another community data source, and it's really nice to be able to say, you know what, I'm happy to share that with you, but if you go to PC Conduit and under tools and resources, it's right there for you. So
yeah, and then you're also able to, I like to do the Control F and be able to find anything that's in these reports instead of paging through. This is a 28-page document, so it's much more efficient for you and your organizations.
Great. Sounds great. If it's all right, let's circle to Kinsey. Kinsey, would it be all right if you went on the mic and we talked to you for a little bit to learn more about what you're searching for?
Sure. Hi.
Hi. So tell me a little bit more about the work that you do around disabilities.
So we serve anyone with a disability, whether it's diagnosed by a professional, self-diagnosed, or it's just something that's affecting your life. And we're helping people to live independently within the community. So we're looking at getting people involved in recreational activities, ensuring that people have access to various pieces of the community, and how many people within the community we're serving.
Excellent. And Maria, would you be able to open that link that Andrea put in the chat to take a look at some of the subtopics we have around disabilities?
Which one do we want to do?
I'm open to you kind of suggesting, but you're more familiar with PC
There we
Conduit than I
go.
am.
Now I'm seeing it.
Okay.
Perfect. There it goes.
Kinsey, you have inadvertently become my volunteer, so thank you for that. All right, so it looks like you've got some different options here. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, sometimes the challenge is almost there's too much data. So we need to figure out like what makes sense that might be relevant to your organization.
So Andrea had curated an indicator type of the county, the local data, and then just health and disabilities. So you can add additional filters and handpick those indicators. Or you can look through here and you can click, say we want to look at adults with disability living in poverty. By clicking on that, you can go through and really see some customized information, really narrowed down to what you're looking for. It tells you where to find the data, where it's sourced from.
And so, Kinsey, do you work primarily in Portage County, or are there multiple counties that you cover?
The bulk of the people we work with are in Portage County, but we also serve 10 other counties.
Okay. And so it seems like this might be a really good opportunity to use comparison data where you could look at perhaps different data points across these different counties as well, too.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's scroll down a little bit to see some of the data points that you've kind of discovered. So there's some wonderful things that are already, that we can already use. You can just kind of put them in a report or copy and paste them, whether they be these charts or the gas gauges. And it looks like there's also opportunities to download the data if you wanted to create your own custom graphics and design. And so, Kinsey, I'm curious, what kind of decisions do you want your, what kind of impact do you want your audience to have when they take a look at the story or the data stories that you share with them? Like what kind of actions or changes in thinking do you want to cause in your audience?
There's two pieces that I think we would like to impact. One is showing that there's a need for our services. So within our community, getting community members on board with our mission, and then also policymakers. And the other piece is, oh gosh, no, I forgot it.
Okay. I would just say like this is like one example of a really great context setting data source that Briar was able to pull up is like how many people live with disabilities and are living in poverty in our region. And so we can kind of see this map out to better understand the distribution.
Yeah, that's a really good tool.
Right. And so it looks like you can also see the trend of changes over time too. And so it does look like it has been decreasing and there's still opportunities for it to be changed even further. And your organization can help contribute to some of the ways that we think about disability and how we work with it in our community.
For sure.
And so I don't recall if it's specifically related to poverty, but there are perhaps other, whether it's this indicator or others that could be relevant that you might be able to pull out.
So you can also go through and just pick any indicator you'd like by clicking on this down arrow. So you can type in here, so we want to look at disability, look at people with ambulatory disabilities, and it will go, where'd it go?
It's loading.
Okay. It's taking its time. There we go. There. So you can quickly and easily switch And you can also choose the different types of locations of from zip codes to different counties, wherever we have the data entered. And you can also change the measurement period. So our most up-to-date data, we try to load everything that we can. But if you look at certain data points, they may be 5 years old, but that might be the most up-to-date data. We can only access what's available. So if it's out there, we will definitely load it, but sometimes it just takes a little while to get that accurate, updated data.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for being our example and letting us walk through a very relevant scenario with you today. And then, so I'll go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint and kind of close out the sharing today. Let's see. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about is engaging audiences, meeting them where they're at. And as I mentioned earlier, I love some of the pieces that Andrea has shared because they talk about taking data that's a lot overwhelming and trying to make it much more consumable. All right, so I don't know if any of you have experienced this before, but having somebody come and talk at you where they plan to share the results of their evaluation or data for the next 30 minutes, you'll get bombarded with nice charts and pithy summaries until your eyes start to blur, and then I'll take any questions. And so I would suggest not doing that and trying to find ways to really make your process of sharing much more interactive and engaging. And there's a wealth of different things that I could cover, and it could be its own workshop session, but here's one easy thing to remember. So 3 magic numbers, 1, 3, and 25. So whether you're doing a report or you're doing a video, think about length. And so a 1-pager or a 1-minute video might be great for somebody who's busy with limited capacity. And so you just want them to get the highlights and get them excited about it. A 3-pager would be helpful for somebody who is a decision maker, where they need enough information, but they don't need more. And you want to kind of get them intrigued and feeling like they know enough to make decisions or take action on it. And then there's the full 25-page report. That's often people who are more experts. Maybe you are running a wonderful child care program in a rural part of Wisconsin, and somebody in Montana wants to learn from your work and duplicate it. They might read the full report to really understand it and translate it to their context. So 1, 3, and 25. However, if you go on the extreme sides of the scales, I want to offer other options. Social media, really much more shorter. And not everybody will want to read that 200-page report, but there will be a couple who will. And I think that's also where a lot of issues around data integrity comes into play, where you want to make sure that whatever you're creating with that 25-page report or that 1-pager, it's rooted in good data. It's rooted in ethical analysis. And so that's where the appendix, the full volume of everything is really captured. And so these are the 5 steps that we've kind of worked through, from your narrative development to your data selection, integrating your data, story refinement, and meeting your audiences where they're at with engagement. And so one thing I want to leave you with is this idea of no stories without numbers and no numbers without stories. And this has been repeated in so many spaces that I occupy that I wasn't able to find where the original source came from. We're going to skip this for the sake of time. And I want to highlight some of the opportunities for you to continue to engage with us. May, can you talk about the United Way campaign?
Yes, thank you, Kaying. United Way campaign kicked off on Thursday with Levitt Amp down at Piffner Park, and will continue through probably the first 2 weeks in December. Many of the organizations that we fund rely on the dollars we collect during our campaign to do the important work of supporting our community members. So we appreciate those of you who will become involved either in the campaign or will contribute to the campaign. So thank you.
Excellent. And on Sunday, will you put in the chat some of these links? Oh, you already did. Wonderful. So that folks can kind of get connected. We also have a community lunch hour coming up next month that will focus on organizational endowments. Our director of program of donor services and programs, Marley Samuels, will be leading that with 3 nonprofit leaders from the community, and we'll talk a little bit more about organizational endowments, what they are, why they matter, and how you can get involved. And then I want to also highlight we have the nonprofit community forum, of which the Community Foundation and United Way are both kind of involved in supporting, along with Mid-State Technical College. So save the date for that. It's an all-day conference. I'm super excited for it. And then we have the Women's Trailblazer Conference, and our Sarah Ross, director of the Women's Fund, is also involved in this conference. And this will be a really great opportunity to engage in issues of leadership around women in our community. All right, and once again, I want to thank all our presenters for all their rich wisdom and knowledge that they were able to share with us. And before you go, I really would love it if you can fill out the survey so we can better understand what worked and what might be an opportunity for improvement in future community lunch hours or other events that we do. And I also want to thank our corporate convening partners, Century and Delta Dental, for really making this possible. These community lunch hours are important opportunities for us to gather and talk about some of the most pressing issues that are facing our community. So with that, we are at about time. We had a few people kind of provide questions and comments throughout, but if you have anything that is still burning, feel free to ask it at this time. Otherwise, feel free to fill out our community lunch hour survey, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. So any questions, comments?
Kaying, just one comment, and I should have probably shared this before. A special thank you to Portage County. Funding for creating PC Conduit came through the county through the American Rescue Plan dollars, through ARPA funds, and that amazing data warehouse website would not have been able to be created without their support. So special shout out to and thanks to the county for that.